Hi, my name is Shannon Myers, and this is my analysis of content language for our major assignment, part 1. So a little bit about my classroom population. I teach second grade in a bilingual setting. My class has 14 students. They are all between the ages of 7 and 8, and they're all Hispanic, so they come from Spanish-speaking countries like Honduras, Mexico, Guatemala, Puerto Rico, and El Salvador. 100% of my students receive free lunch and free breakfast that's provided by the state because of our demographic. My classroom is a bilingual special ed classroom, so I have five students, with IEPs. One student is classified with autism. Another student is classified as OHI for ADHD, and then I have 3 students classified with a learning disability. One student has a 504 plan for hypothyroidism, so he receives modified content and extended time. And I also have 2 students receiving basic skills pull-out intervention. So a little bit about where I teach. I teach in the public schools in Lakewood. I teach specifically at Clifton Avenue Grade School. Lakewood Public Schools is composed of 8 public schools, and there are about 800 students in my elementary school at Clifton. We have a minority enrollment of 95%, and of that 95%, 84% of the students were a former L or are a current L. We also have a high population of students getting classified with special needs. We have about 67% of students that were referred last year that were classified. Clifton Avenue Grade School is placed at the bottom 50% of all schools in New Jersey for overall test scores, specifically in math and in reading. And as I stated, 100% of my students classify for free and reduced lunch, but in my school as an entirety, we have 91% of the students that classify for free and reduced lunch. So my classroom proficiency levels, I am one of 2 bilingual second grade classrooms. To qualify for bilingual services, students receive a score of 3.0 or below on Access. So how we split up the 2 bilingual classrooms is my classroom has level 1 emergent bilinguals, and they score between 1.0 and 2.0 on Access. And the other bilingual class is anywhere from 2.0 and greater. So content area and curriculum. I chose to focus on mathematics. I feel that mathematics comes with a lot of vocabulary that I tend to not really address. And math is always an area that I'm looking to build on and improve on as a teacher. I'm focusing on a unit that's actually coming up. It's Unit 9, Time and Money. And the curriculum name is the name of my curriculum that I use in Lakewood. It's called Common Core Math Lessons. So because we are a RAC school, a Title I school, our curriculum is written in-house. Reading and writing and math are all written for us by reading coaches, math coaches, and writing. So everything is written and scripted for us. We're not allowed to really deter from this curriculum or anything like that. Everything that we have to say and use are all in our book for us. So these content objectives come directly from my curriculum. Students will be able to distinguish between the different coins and the different kinds of clocks, distinguish between the hour and minute hand, to understand the difference and name activities in AM and PM, tell time to the nearest 5 minutes on an analog clock, to read a digital clock, to be able to make their own analog clock, to solve word problems using coins and with time, for students to be able to add coins together to identify a value, and for students to be able to label money amounts using the cent symbol and the dollar sign. So the standards that go along with my unit are the mathematical practices for grade 2, to be able to tell and write time on an analog and digital clock, to the nearest 5 minutes using AM and PM, and also to solve word problems using quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, dollar bills, and using the dollar sign and the cent sign correctly. The WIDA standard that I focus on is the ELP Standard 3. English language learners communicate information, ideas, and concepts necessary for academic success in the content area of math. For the proficiency level, I put level 1 entering, and I just listed some different like strands for reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So what is difficult for L's, specifically what I think will be difficult for my students when discussing vocabulary and different word phrases and semantics. So vocabulary, I listed the different kinds of clocks, the components of a clock, specifically the minute and hour hand. A clock having like hands is like usually very abstract for students, especially L's. AM and PM, the term noon, and then the different names of the coins, quarter, dime, nickel, penny, the term exchange, and also the word equivalent. Then some expressions that I had listed, half past, skip counting, half hour, 1 hour earlier or later, equivalent sets, different combinations of coins, how much more, and the value of this coin is this. So vocabulary supports for what I find will be difficult for them. So in our curriculum, we these are the visuals and the kind of like supports that were given to us. One of them over here is the model of the analog and the digital clock, and that was in my curriculum, and we are expected to have that up in our rooms, or a model very similar. And we have the coin song. There's actually like a little YouTube video that goes along with it, and it's actually kind of cute. So language functions and structures. According to Calla in the Mathematics Handbook Chapter 10, it says that the language of math is not spoken in everyday activities, so it's especially confusing for L students. So in my unit, I discussed the comparatives, how a quarter has a value greater than a dime, and how a penny has a value less than a nickel. The passive voice, when 2 hours is added, what time will it be? When a dime is added to this amount, how much money will you have? And the logical connectors, especially this first one, if there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, then there are 30 minutes in a half hour. That's really abstract for the kids because they don't necessarily have the foundation or the number sense that 30 is half of 60. So that 30 minutes is half of 60 minutes is like especially difficult for them. And then if 1 quarter equals 25 cents, then 4 quarters equals $1. Activities and language skills in the classroom. They're going to be expected to participate by speaking in class discussions using the content vocabulary, to work in groups and use this terminology, to be able to understand and recognize different times and coins orally, and to be able to ask and answer questions. At home, it's a lot more reading and writing, reading and recognizing content vocabulary independently, reading directions and the problems, identifying the written times and coins, and to be able to write words and numbers that correspond with their responses. To support my students, especially with the vocabulary, in my curriculum and in actually all curriculums that we have, reading, writing, and math, we're required and expected to use anchor charts. It was kind of like a district initiative when we became a RAC school. So these are just some anchor charts that were sent to me by my math coach. She sent me some that are in English and in Spanish. Usually on my anchor charts, I put English and Spanish together, but these are just some of the ways that, you know, we're supporting our L's by using the terminologies, analog and digital, and also the steps for telling time and how to read the different hands. So the expected behaviors of my students. At the carpet, my students have a partner that they're expected to work with and conversate with. They're expected to participate in whole group by answering and asking questions. They're also expected to ask any questions that they may have during independent practice and also during teacher-led small group. My students also use a program called iReady. It's an intervention program, and it is part of our math block as well. And during that time, they're required to listen and read independently. So some of the cultural differences that are probably not addressed. According to Calla, Chapter 10, if L students received math instruction in their native countries prior to coming to the United States, then their cultural differences need to be addressed in order to ensure understanding. And I do have quite a few newcomers. I have a newcomer actually that just started with me this week from Honduras. So these are some of the things that I plan on touching on when I get to this unit. The term noon. In English, we refer to noon as 12 p.m. and we say the word noon. But in Spanish, they don't write 12 p.m. They actually write 12 m. A cultural difference in AM and PM. So because my students come from this demographic where a lot of their parents tend to work at night, one of the questions in our unit is actually mommy leaves for work and they're expected to answer in the AM. You know, normally parents, leave for work after they put their kids on the bus. But actually my students have a lot of their parents where they have night jobs or they have a job in the morning and the afternoon and they're confused with how to respond. So that's something that also needs to be addressed. And also the decimal point versus the comma. According to the CALA handbook, some Spanish-speaking countries use a comma to represent a decimal point. And when students are expected to write a dollar amount and then change, I have to, kind of prompt them and instruct them how we use a decimal point and not a comma. And finally, just some implications for planning and assessment. I plan to adapt these materials by, relating to their past experiences with time and money. I use a lot of visuals and hands-on materials. I plan on using Judy clocks and coins with them and just, really tactile things. To build background, I always have a word wall for key vocabulary. I don't do this just for math. I have one for reading and writing also. And I always put words in there that go along with the unit and I change them out. Sometimes I add to it or I take away from it depending on the lesson for the day. And I always have those things up so that students, we hold them accountable for this vocabulary. So I always make sure that I have it up and readily available to them so that they know that they're held accountable for it. And then to scaffold my students, we use the gradual release model in my district. It's actually how our math unit and curriculum is written up for us. We have a teacher model, a couple guided practices, an independent practice, and then a number talk and a spiral. And this gradual release model helps scaffolding the students because it, kind of leads them into the eventuality that they will be able to do the expected activity entirely independently. This is my presentation. This is the end. The next slide is just some references. So thank you so much.